Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Hope you guys are all doing well today. We're just hanging out here in beautiful Durham, North Carolina. It is cold here today. I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but it was in the teens last night in freedom units or whatever, Fahrenheit, whatever we use here in the U.S. It was really cold, and I don't like that. I'm not into cold, so I'm wearing a jacket. With my Nirvana shirt. All right, good. Today we are, that was enough nonsense. Today we are in week 8 of our Effects on Violin series, and we are talking about wah or wah-wah pedals. And why would you keep doing that? Anyway, so we're talking about wah. That's one of my favorite effects. I love using wah, and we're going to have a special guest today, but we'll get to that in just a second. In this series, we're hitting a different effect every week. If you guys have been with us for all this, you're like, week 8, what are you talking about? We're hitting a different effect every week. And I think I've got about 20 weeks planned. So we're in week 8. We've got at least 12 more to go. So we're going to be at this for a hot minute. So far, we have talked about all these things. We've talked about gain structure, EQ, IRs, compression, sub-octave, harmonizers. This week is wah. If you'll notice, we have a special guest just about every week. That's the goal, is to have an artist that uses that effect in their work, and love to get their input on how they use that effect, what sort of different techniques they use. You guys get to hear from me enough. It's nice to get some other artists platformed here. And this week we are talking to Rudolf Haken, who was my professor at the University of Illinois and a fantastic artist and just a really deep thinker on these types of things. So I'm looking forward to playing my chat with him to talk about wah. So you guys all know what wah is. You've seen everybody's rocking the wah pedal, and that's why it's called wah, because that's the sound that it makes. But what exactly is wah? It is a sweepable bandpass filter that you can control the center frequency with your foot. And Shauna is giving me that kind of faraway look right now. Like, what on earth are you talking about, math boy? So when we were in EQ, remember we talked about different types of filters. If you missed the EQ week, 2 weeks we did on EQ, urge you to go back and check that out after this video. Wait till we're done. But in EQ, we get to control the volume of each frequency in the frequency spectrum separately. So a band pass means it's allowing one band of frequencies to pass, and everything else is cut. So here's a visual of that. You can see that there's this band that's in the middle, and that bell shape that you get is just the way that filters work, that it's going to be sort of a bell-shaped frequency that is allowed to pass, and everything else is cut. And then when we say sweepable, what does that mean? The center frequency of that band can be changed or swept from low to high. So we can let the low frequencies pass, or we can let the high frequencies pass, or anything in between. And this is sort of what that would look like. There's just a little bit of an animation to show you what that band pass, if we're rocking that pedal back and forth, this is what's happening. It's basically an EQ pedal, and this is what's happening with the wah. So yeah, man, I was excited. I figured out how to animate something. I'm an animator now. What? Nice. So there are 2 end positions, and we call those heel down and toe down. Heel down is when the low frequencies are able to pass, and toe down is when the high frequencies can pass. I know there are some EQ pedals where you can flip the polarity and do that backwards. That would totally mess with my mind. But yeah, it is possible to do it the other way if you want to. And here's just a quick demonstration of what those 2 end positions sound like. All right, so that is, you could see in the little top corner there that heel down and toe down. Now, what are some common mistakes that people make when they're using wah? And I've got a little demonstration video after this to show you all 4 of these. One is to only use like the wiggly motion. We're going to sit here and my toes just going to be flapping like a sheet in the wind. How do you like that? Another one is to only go with the extremes. They forget that this is a pedal, that there's a whole spectrum of colors that we can get from this. And people just put their heel down or they just put their toe down. It's not a switch. There's a continuum. It's not just one extreme or the other. Being overly rhythmic is a really common thing for classically trained people to do, where the pedal is going like this and they don't know how to do anything other than just do this with it. Because I'm counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so we don't want to do that. And then the opposite of that, just being overly rhythmic, is just like randomly freaking out. You're like yeah 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 yeah, right? So we don't want to do either one of those. But here is a quick demonstration video where we're seeing all 4 of these common mistakes. All right. Somebody's saying no sound. My dad is saying no sound on Facebook. I don't really know how to fix that. That would be really bad. I hope that not everybody is experiencing that. Can other people there hear me? You guys go ahead and comment there. Hopefully there's just a technical issue on one end and it's just for one person, not for everybody. Anyway, yeah, somebody dump in the comments section if you can hear me, because that would be really great if people can hear me. This would be a terrible video if you can't hear. So where to put the wah pedal in your signal chain, I would say you want to experiment with placement. You can put it at the beginning, you can put it at the end, you can put it in the middle. There aren't really any rules here. You can do whatever you want. I often put it before the time-based effects like reverb and delay, but you can put it after. And I'm going to do a quick demo here where you can see a couple of different options about where to put it in your signal chain. So you can hear on that last example where if I'm letting it ring, if I do the wah after the reverb, then I can actually control what the reverb sounds like. So that's cool. Okay, so people are hearing me, but apparently there's some dropouts where Steve May is. Sorry, man. Hopefully we're going to get a chance to hang out next week. I'm going to be in Los Angeles for the NAMM show. So, yeah, okay. Good. I'm glad people are hearing this. That's great. How to use the wah pedal. Again, not really a lot of rules here. It's just whatever sounds good to you. I did talk about a couple of common mistakes. There's nothing saying you can't do it like that, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. It's not the most artistic way to use it. One thing that people do a lot is to pair wah with distortion. I like that a lot. And I will caution you that it's one of those tools that's a little like garlic, right? It's a good seasoning. And I do like garlic, but it is possible to use too much garlic, and it is possible to put garlic on things that garlic shouldn't be on, right? Breakfast cereal, probably not the best place to put garlic. So overuse of this pedal can diminish its impact. It's one of those things that you want to use. You want to use it when you should use it, but then don't use it when you shouldn't use it. One quick thing, I forgot to make a slide for this, but I will show you just a technical issue. The way you turn a wah pedal on, this is the switch. So you'll have this sitting here, and it's just sort of sitting on your pedal board. When you want it to go, you will mash down on this part of it with your toe really hard and make that thing click. and then the wah pedal will be working. And then to shut it off, you mash on that again, and it'll click that toe switch off. Some wah pedals, this one doesn't, but some of them even have an LED on the side to tell you that it's on or off. This is what I use to control my Helix. On the Helix, I can see on the screen whether my wah is on or off. Sometimes if you don't have an LED, you might be like, wow, my fiddle sounds really nasally, and realize, oh snap, my wah pedal's on, because sometimes there's not an LED to tell you that. So it's a thing that you kind of got to pay attention to. But yeah, to turn on and off a wah pedal, it's this switch right here underneath. And you just do that by mashing down with your toe. All right, there are another couple of examples that I want to show you on how maybe to use wah. There's not a right way or a wrong way. These are just kind of a couple of ideas that maybe you can take them and run with them. All right, just a couple quick ideas. Now, we've gotten to the interesting part. We spent 10 minutes or so talking about what wah is and sort of technically how to use it. That's the nerdy part. Now we're going to get to the good part. We're going to get a chance to hear from Professor Rudolf Haken. And this is going to be, I don't know, it's just about 30 minutes. It's a pretty long discussion that I had with him. But man, he really spends a lot of time thinking about this stuff. He had a lot of really important stuff to cover, and there wasn't anything that I was like, well, we should cut this. It's all good content. It's really, really cool stuff. Even if you're a person who uses wah a lot, he has done this at a very high level, and I think you're really going to dig this conversation. So how did you start using wah pedals? What was your first introduction to all that? Because like you're a classically trained violist, an acoustic violist, you're a viola professor, and then started messing with electrics. What was your introduction to wah?
Well, actually, I had before I had the wah, I had a talk box, interestingly enough. And it seems, that a wah is more sophisticated or not as sophisticated as a talk box to use. But the talk box was cool there, of course, as you directly shape the sounds. You shape the vowels with your mouth directly, and with the wah, you shape them with your foot. And so I played around with that talk box quite a bit. It was one of those old ones that has separate preamp. And so if you turn that up too high, you have the thing in your mouth, you could knock your teeth out. It was one of those really scary ones. So in the meantime, I got I got one of the modernized talk boxes. But in any case, then I got an old crybaby wah, and I started playing with that quite a bit. And the thing I noticed there, that was, oh gosh, 1997, I think, or 98 or something. And that one had a little bit of a problem that it would pick up radio interference. And so the very first time I took it out in public, I played a concerto I wrote with an orchestra. And during this wah, beautiful passage I was playing with the wah pedal, you could hear beautiful music for the two of us from the local easy listening station. And it was pretty funny. It came through with it. But now the newer crybabies don't, they've shielded them better, so you don't have that issue anymore. And the other issue on that one was also that even when it wasn't in use, even when it was off, if it was part of the signal chain, it noticeably degraded the rest of the playing. And now they have this bypass in them. So I think all of the ones you can buy now have a bypass in them, so that you don't so you don't get a lesser sound overall. And so about, I don't know, 12 years ago, I bought myself this full tone Clyde Deluxe wah pedal, and that one is just amazing. It has super beautiful sounds. Um, so I use that uh, really extensively. I started really messing with it um, a lot, like on a daily basis. And then a few years ago, I, you know, fell in with these questionable characters, Matt and Chuck. I don't know, you stay away from people like that. But they had these Helix floor units with built-in wahs that you could edit, and that's what I've actually been using ever since. And on the Helix, you can you can edit directly on the box itself. And I admit I have never once done that. I've only used the HX Edit software. You can attach the uh, Helix to a computer with a USB, like a printer cable, and then there's something called HX Edit, and you can change the parameters. And what's really cool there is you can actually see how different kinds of wah are created. So, like on this full tone Clyde, I don't know if you can see this here. It has three types. It says whacked, Jimmy, and shaft. And it's kind of mysterious. Like, well, they sound pretty different from each other, but how do they achieve that? And on HX Edit, you can see it's actually not that complicated. They heel position, as gives you the lowest frequencies, and that particular setting has, and the toe position gives you the highest frequencies, and you can adjust how much they are. So if you like, I tried just for fun going to the most extreme, like 20 hertz to 2000, something like that, and the heel just sounds like a thunk, and the toe sounds just like a mosquito. And so obviously you're never going to go quite that extreme. But if you make it really narrow, you get this that kind of sound. You can make it wider and get quite a different sound. So you can make a lot of noticeably different effects using the wah pedal. And the Helix floor has this built-in expression pedal, but you can also buy a separate one and use that. And so what's always interested me, especially after using the TalkBox, is the sort of the way you can get an equivalence to a sound shape you make with your mouth and the sound shape you make with your foot, playing a wah, or a trombonist using a plunger, or a trumpeter using a mute. They get a very similar effect using totally different methods, and I always like sort of translating them. So obviously the word wah is an onomatopoeia, so it's somewhat, on a basic level, it sounds like wah. So so this episode is brought to you by the letter W, because there's so many different words starting with W, and you can actually make them. You can shape those letters or those words. So if you say wow, or way, or what, you can actually work on making your Viper, or whatever instrument you're playing, sound like that word, even though you're not using a TalkBox. And in fact, I've even tried going into different dialects. So I take a sentence like, why would I? And just imagine people in different dialects saying like, "Why would I?" or "Why would I?" And you actually change the parameters on your helix. So why would I has a much narrower difference between the low and high frequency than "Why would I?" which has and then you also have the speed at which you go from heel to toe. So even if you have a sort of a drawn out why, it can be why or why, and all those differences. It's actually you can sort of get lost in a sort of a rabbit hole of experimentation with it, and um, then of course there are all kinds of things like with the bow. If you put the bow over the fingerboard, you get higher, more high frequencies, and or if you play very lightly, so you can play super lightly, but have the pedal way down in heel position in a low frequency, and you get sort of this contrast. And then there are, I mean, I can go on and on about all these things, but there are also interesting things like if you say the word wow, you tend to say wow. You get louder and higher, but you can also wow, wow. You can get lower in pitch or quieter, or even if we say just simply we say wah, in, for example, in German, the word for ear is ohr, is ohr, but it's like wah, except that the emphasis is on the beginning. So ohr versus wah is a very similar thing with your foot, but then with your bow you would have a different stroke. So in any case, that's the sort of thing I do. And this demo reel I'm going to share later with different uses of why. I demonstrate sort of a lot of the different ways I use wah pedals.
Yeah, we're going to watch this video that you sent me that's going to have some excerpts from the Denizone concerto and then from your concertos.
Yeah.
You want to try to set any of these clips up so people will have an idea of what they're watching and maybe what techniques you're using in these clips?
Yeah, so Joe Denizone wrote this fabulous concerto, and I made sort of a studio recording of it in a video right here at home in front of this green screen. And so uh, he has sort of a lot of like metal styles and jazz styles in there. And so in his concerto, you can hear me playing, very heavy distortion with a wah. If you do the old fashioned thing like the full tone Clyde deluxe wah pedal plus a distortion pedal plus and you hook them all together, obviously you're going to get very different sounds if you distortion plus wah, or if you do chopping with a wah pedal and so forth. And one thing to keep in mind, whether you do it that way or something like the Helix or a similar device, is that the order of effects really matters. So if you play something and you reverberate that beautifully like a big hall, and then you apply wah to the reverberated sound. That's totally different from putting it through a wah and then reverberating the wah sound. And I've been trying to think of analogies to it. I don't know if this kind of makes sense, but you if you take a if it's dark and you want to take a photo, you can simply turn a light on, take a photo, or you can take a photo with a flash. I don't know if that makes sense. Or you can add light in Photoshop after the fact. I mean, you're adding light, but you're adding it at different stages. And so anybody who wants to mess with these things, I would encourage them, just really mess with it. Just, hey, what happens if I press this button? Just switch things around, and you'll notice pretty quickly how different how much difference it makes what order they're in. And then also another thing is that's interesting on the Helix you can set how much of your own sound you get and how much of the wah sound, or how much of the octave sound, or how much of the distorted sound. So you can mix your own sound with, with the affected sound. And so if you have wah and then reverb, but you set the reverb at 50%, then it's not entirely reverberated, and so forth. So these things are all endlessly customizable, which is why I have really fallen in love with this Helix. And and then there are some other like a quad cortex, and my students keep every Sunday we have our electric strings parties, and someone brings in yet a new toy or a new cool device to look at. And so there are quite a few that have some and really great user interfaces as well. So the other aspect that I kind of want to mention with not just the wah, but distortion and any effects. There's a criticism classical musicians will level against electric instruments is that, well, that's all gimmicky. And anytime somebody if they make a viola joke, I think, well, maybe there's some truth to it, because I play the viola. Or if people say, well, classical music, when it's performed in a boring way, instead of just being insulted, I kind of, well, is there some truth to it? And by the same token, we have to be careful not to let all these things become gimmicky, like, oh, wow, this is cool, that's cool, that's cool, but really use them as expressive devices. And one example is I have a student named Sarah Schultz. Sarah from the Mark Woodruff Orchestra Campus. She's playing the Walton Viola Concerto on the electric. And the opening of that concerto, it's a big romantic piece, and he never even dreamt that it would be played on an electric instrument. But a wah used carefully there really enhances the expressiveness of it. So if you really apply it as an expressive device and not just as a cool effect, and you use these things to really, it sounds kind of corny, but to really look inside yourself and express what you need to, use them as tools for that, then I think that's where they really get they really come into their own. They become sort of instruments unto themselves, or sort of supplements to the instrument. And it takes a lot of practice. And one more thing I want to mention, I have two more things I want to mention to anybody, sort of getting into this. One is practice. If you're going to use pedals, practice wearing the same shoes you're going to wear when you play in public, because Um, they, I mean, if you practice in big hiking boots and then you go out on stage playing with high heeled shoes, uh, you're going to, obviously the result is going to be totally different. And not only that, I would also caution people against having like huge setups at home and then traveling with smaller setups that are slightly different and only, sort of going through those the day before. I mean, if the setup you're going to use, if you travel somewhere to play, live with that for a week at least, and just really, really, and every last little thing, the exact angle. Um, so, uh, so that's one thing, and the other is if you do the sort of old-fashioned thing of, have buying a bunch of pedals and linking them together, be sure your patch cables are all of the very highest quality, because the rule of the weakest link definitely applies. So you could play in the most beautiful hall with the greatest equipment and no expense spared, but you have one little patch cable that's faulty. That defines the whole thing. It's kind of funny because you know like some of them seem like a Mogami patch cable seems ridiculously expensive, but it really will do the trick.
Yeah, I know you spend a ton of time thinking about not only all these things, but how to teach these things. So
Yes.
if you've got some, some lessons that you give to a person who's getting started with a wah, how do you teach them to get the coordination between their right hand and their left hand and their right foot? Do you have some exercises for that?
Yeah, I mean, in general, there are two approaches I take that are almost opposite. One is I say, okay, let's like try to define in your mind what you're after. So if you want this to sound like wah, 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 like that, all right, let's go for that, right? And you just work at it until it sounds like that. The other approach is to just the opposite approach is just to mess with the equipment and see what it can do. Kind of leave it to chance. And the coordination is definitely the main thing. You just and it's the main thing with looping. It's the main thing with and with the wah and with a whammy. But even with things like distortion, if you turn distortion on and off at the wrong moment, the reverb from one note suddenly isn't distorted anymore. It sounds really off. So even that coordination is off, is vital. So for all these pedals, I actually have a rhythm in my mind when to press the pedal. So I'm playing da 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 or something, but the pedal is going da 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 or da 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 da. I have exactly like, okay, 1/16 value after I play that note, I'm pressing this. And with the wah, um, there are just so many things to coordinate. And it's not just your foot and your arm, it's your vibrato and your uh, the bow pressure and on. All these things work together, and so you just play one note at a time and really try to get it right, and one and another, um, and then one phrase at a time. And I found that at first people try the wah and it just sounds totally off, but just after an hour, they actually, you know, because what the habit people generally have is go heel toe, like that really fast, but kind of go in the middle and then wobble it a little and then over and then, really just like you don't use your full bow for every stroke. And to treat it with the same refinement as your bow or your vibrato, that's where it really is. Like, um, yeah, you have your bowing technique and your left hand technique and your foot technique. So you really have increased it by 50%. And, it is kind of sad that string players generally do nothing with their feet. that it's kind of wasted. But no more.
Yeah, we had these whole two limbs that we weren't even using. And like, you're
Yeah.
also a pianist, and I'm sure you play pipe organ. My mom is a pipe organist. Like they're doing three or four things with their hands, and both feet are going. And like, we can do that, right?
Yeah, I mean it's really cool adding electronic effects. I mean, I long 100 years ago or so, I messed around a lot with Hammond organs, and you'd have the Leslie speaker spinning, and if you play faster than it spins, like the effect you get there is really amazing, and and just the relationship between your vibrato and your bow speed and um, your pedal is really it's really fascinating. So even with a classical with an Amish classical violin, and you're just playing, just coordinating your right and left hand. There's so many factors there. If you sometimes I'll tell people, I'll play as expressively as you can with no vibrato, and then add vibrato, and then it's quite different from just assuming, oh yeah, I need to vibrate all the time. And with the wah pedal, you can do something similar. You can say, just imagine this with wah, but don't allow yourself to use it. It's like that, and wah, 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 wah. Like suddenly it comes in there, and then the whole thing of singing. This is an age-old thing, sing what you want to play before you play it, right? I mean, they've been doing that's thousands of years. I don't know, thousands of years of music teaching, and the same thing goes for using a wah. Like, shape the word with your mouth, or the sort of, not word necessarily, but the sound shape. Wow, 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 wow. Just try that, and you'll notice how equivalent that is. And you start translating what you do here to what your foot does. Oh yeah, okay, like that. Um, so you can learn it, and I guess another thing is, it's people can easily think, well, the wah pedal is just sort of a little gimmick I'm adding to my playing, but that's as if you've only played pizzicato and you think of the bow as a gimmick you're adding. It's like, it's a completely different thing. It's yet another factor, and it takes an enormous amount of skill and refinement if you really, really want to do it right. And it's also things like chopping. It's amazing how different they sound once you add a wah. And chopping just dry, and then chopping with a wah, chopping with distortion, and then wah, or wah and then distortion, all those things, they really change it, and um, you get sounds that you really didn't realize you could get. um,
Man, thanks for joining us and sharing all the wisdom that you've got on wah pedals. Where can people find your music? Where can they find where you're going to be playing? If they want to come study with you, how do they find you?
well, if you want to come study with me, I'm at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and we run a degree program, uh, for undergrad and graduate, and including doctoral degrees in electric strings. So you can come here and actually get degrees in performance and literature, or music ed. Um, and we have great music technology programs here as well. And if you want to read more about me, you just go on rudolfhaken.com, and you can read my bio and see all my beautiful photos and all that kind of stuff. And on YouTube, you can find quite a few videos. And yeah, so I do need to be better about listing upcoming events because I have I had one. But yeah, and I play overseas quite a bit too. So I like this last fall I was in Tokyo and Tbilisi. Tbilisi being the capital of the Republic of Georgia. Um, and so I'm going back to Japan this May, and then sometime this year we'll perform a mass I wrote in Croatian, and it'll be performed in Croatia. I just finished this mass, and I'm still orchestrating it and all that. So I have quite a few things, and yeah, some concerts. So I'll list them. You have inspired me to list them on my site under upcoming events. All right.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you, man. It's a pleasure to hang out with you again, and hopefully
Yeah.
we'll get a chance to be in the same room again before too long. But yeah, thanks for joining us and teaching us about wah. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Rudolf. It did occur to me that we had talked about that there are a bunch of different kinds of wah pedals, but I had not demonstrated any different ones. So in my Helix, I think there's, I don't know, 10 or 12 different wah pedal models. So I'm just going to kind of flip through and play a couple of them for you. This is the UK wah pedal. All right, that's one. Let's try a different one. This is the fossil wah pedal. So you can hear each one kind of has a little bit different flavor to the sound. Let's try another one. Here's a weeper pedal. So obviously the concept is the same. Each one is still a sweepable bandpass filter, but each one uses a little bit different algorithm to do it. Maybe the band is a little narrower or wider. So let's see. Here's the Chrome Custom. Anyway, that's just a few different wah pedals. I think, like I said, there's a dozen or so that are in the Helix. So you'll just have to kind of find the wah pedal that has the sound that you like. Also, if you're a Helix person, I think Rudolf mentioned that you can blend that sound in. So this is at 100%. Let's come. Here's if it sounds like at like 30%. I actually generally tend to I generally tend to run mine at about 50%. So here's where we are. We're at about 50% here. So that's kind of, I like to run it about 50% because I get some of my dry sound in there, and it's not so wah-y, but you get the wah effect, but you also get some meat.